Your brain is lying to you the terrifying science of false memories. Soft tape hiss. Old family photos flicker across the screen. Let me ask you something. What's your earliest childhood memory? Not the story you've told 100 times. Not the one your family keeps reminding you about. The one you genuinely believe you remember. Maybe it's a birthday party. Maybe it's your first day of school. Maybe it's the day you got lost somewhere and felt terrified. Now here's the uncomfortable question. How sure are you that it actually happened? Not the general idea, the memory itself. Because according to modern neuroscience, some of your most vivid memories may not be memories at all. They may be stories. Stories your brain quietly wrote years ago and convinced you were real. And the strangest part? You'd never know the difference. A memory that never happened. Back in the 1990s, psychologist Elizabeth Loftus conducted a series of experiments that completely changed how scientists think about memory. The setup was simple. Participants were given several stories from their childhood. Most were real events provided by family members. One was fake. The fake story claimed that when the participant was a child, they had become lost in a shopping mall and were eventually rescued by a stranger. Nothing dramatic. Nothing unbelievable. Just a small childhood incident. Except it never happened. And yet, after hearing the story several times, many participants began remembering it. Not vaguely. In detail. They described the layout of the mall, the clothes people were wearing, the panic they felt. Some even added details researchers had never mentioned. Think about that for a second. These people weren't lying. They weren't confused. Most genuinely believed what they were saying. Their brains had taken a suggestion and turned it into a memory. A memory complete with sights, sounds, emotions, and confidence. If that doesn't make you slightly uneasy, it probably should, because it means memory isn't nearly as reliable as most of us think. Your brain was never designed to record reality. Most people imagine memory as a video camera. Life happens. The brain records it. Years later, you hit play. Simple. Except that's not how memory works at all. Your brain doesn't store experiences like video files. It stores fragments. A smell, a sound, an emotion, a face, a few scattered details. When you remember something, your brain pulls those fragments together and reconstructs the event. In other words, every memory is partly an act of creation. Every time you remember something, you're rebuilding it. And every rebuild creates an opportunity for change. A missing detail gets filled in. A forgotten face becomes clearer. An emotion grows stronger. Without realizing it, you're editing your own past. Again and again. For years. Sometimes for decades. The result feels real. Because to your brain, reality isn't the priority. Consistency is. Why evolution wants an imperfect memory. At first, this sounds like a terrible design flaw. Why would evolution create a memory system that can make mistakes? The answer becomes clearer when you think about what the brain is actually trying to do. Its primary job isn't preserving history. Its primary job is survival. Imagine you're one of our ancestors walking across an open plain. Something moves in the tall grass. You don't know what it is. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's a predator. If your brain waits for perfect information before reacting, you're already in danger. The individuals who survived weren't necessarily the most accurate. They were the ones who made useful decisions quickly. Evolution rewards survival, not perfect record keeping. The same principle applies to memory. Your brain doesn't need a perfect archive. It needs a useful model of reality. A model that helps predict danger, avoid mistakes, and navigate the future. Accuracy is nice. Survival is essential. When those two goals conflict, survival usually wins. The story you tell yourself. Here's where things get personal. Your brain isn't just storing memories. It's building a version of you. Psychologists sometimes call this the narrative self. The story you tell yourself about who you are. Maybe you're the person who never gives up. Maybe you're the one who always gets hurt. Maybe you're the outsider, the survivor, the fighter. Whatever that story is, your brain works surprisingly hard to protect it. And sometimes it does that by adjusting memories. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but subtly. If a memory supports your identity, it tends to stay. If it challenges your identity, it may slowly change, or fade, or disappear altogether. Over time, your memories begin serving the story, not necessarily the truth. That's one reason siblings often remember the same childhood completely differently. They lived through the same events, but built different stories around them. Years later, they're convinced they experienced different realities. In a sense, they did. The strange case of collective false memories. Now things get even weirder, because sometimes entire groups of people remember things that never happened. This phenomenon is known as the Mandela effect. The name comes from a surprisingly common belief. Thousands of people distinctly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s. Except he didn't. He was released, and later became president of South Africa. Yet many people still felt absolutely certain they remembered hearing about his death decades earlier. And that's just one example. People remember movie quotes incorrectly, logos that never existed, historical events that happened differently than they remember, and they're often incredibly confident. The fascinating question isn't why one person gets something wrong. The fascinating question is why millions of people can get the exact same thing wrong. The answer lies in how memory spreads. We influence each other. We repeat stories. We absorb information from friends, family, television, and social media. Eventually, a false memory can feel just as real as a true one. Not because it's accurate, because it's familiar. And familiarity is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Social media is rewriting your memories. For most of human history, memories existed only inside the brain. Today, that's no longer true. Now, we outsource memory to technology. Our phones remember everything. Photos, videos, messages, locations, entire years of our lives. That sounds helpful, but researchers have discovered something interesting. The more we rely on devices to remember for us, the less our brains engage in remembering. When you're busy recording an experience, you're often paying less attention to the experience itself. The phone remembers, so you don't have to. Years later, when you think about that vacation, that birthday, or that relationship, what often comes to mind isn't the actual moment. It's the photograph, the edited version, the filtered version, the version that received likes and comments. The record slowly replaces the reality. And eventually, you may find yourself remembering the image more clearly than the event itself. For the first time in human history, memory is no longer entirely biological. Algorithms now participate in shaping how we remember our lives, and most of us barely notice. So, what can you actually trust? At this point, you might be wondering, if memory can be altered, if the past can be rewritten, if the brain constantly edits reality, then what can we trust? Maybe not every detail, maybe not every timeline, maybe not every story, but there's something surprisingly resilient beneath all of it: emotion. You may not remember an event exactly as it happened, but the feeling it left behind often remains. The fear, the joy, the loneliness, the excitement. Those emotional traces help shape who you become, even when the story itself changes. In many ways, memories aren't records of reality. They're records of meaning. And perhaps that's what the brain was trying to preserve all along. Final thought. The next time you look through an old photo album, or tell a childhood story, or remember a moment that feels absolutely certain, pause for a second. Ask yourself one question. Am I remembering the past? Or am I remembering the last version of the story my brain created? Because memory isn't a museum. It isn't a vault. It isn't a video archive. It's a living thing, constantly changing, constantly adapting, constantly rewriting itself. And maybe the greatest illusion your brain ever created is the feeling that your memories never change at all. Pause. So tell me, what's a memory you've always been certain about, but now you're not so sure? Leave it in the comments. And if you're fascinated by the science of survival, the mysteries of the human mind, and the hidden forces that shape humanity, subscribe to Survival Archive. Because sometimes the most dangerous place you'll ever explore is your own mind.